You're muted, Sabrina.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the fourth and final in our Foresight series, but I would say final, but not final, just final for now. So I just wanted to, again, thank all the organizers and thank everyone else behind the scenes from CADESA and the support from the CADAP XP4 program, including the EU and EFAD, as well as the ACRO program Constance and myself are working on with support from the World Bank, who've helped us put together this Foresight program. And we are hoping this partnership also continues, and that's going to be part of today's session, is really finding out where to next and how we can continue to build Foresight capacity within the region. Yeah, so really, I think we've got a good cohort that have been with us over the last 4 sessions, and really hoping that that the training has allowed us to really get across the need for transformational planning. And we've dived into some examples in climate resilience in the SADC region, and we've also hopefully demonstrated some practical and concrete Foresight tools and methods, and at least introduced the concept of Foresight. So we're here as part of the 4th one in the series, and for those who've not joined all of them, don't worry, we will be dipping in and out, and we've got the chat box if there's any questions or queries, and at the end of the session we'll be sending all the links and resources. So we just wanted to run a quick poll to say, what's your confidence right now to carry out a Foresight process? What do you feel like? Do you feel like how do you rate yourself now as a emerging Foresight practitioner? It'd be really nice to understand from being exposed to Foresight where you feel you are in terms of your confidence. So if you just can place your votes, we can get a sense of everybody's confidence in the team right now as a Foresight practitioner. We'll get a couple more votes, and then I think we can end it, Pierre, just in the interests of time and what we've got to get through today. We'll get to 75%, and then I think we're good. Great, I think we can end it now. Okay, so I think, 65%, I think the majority, I guess we would still need some technical support to carry out a Foresight process. And that's brilliant. We've got 90% of you who are ready to work with the team you're in and to start guiding a Foresight process. And this is really encouraging to hear this kind of level of confidence as we go forward. And we hope that also that the exposure to Foresight has really made you kind of feel that the mindset shift and what this quote says about cognitive agility, so that you're able to really use and be able to apply this kind of future thinking mindset. So being able to explore future developments and really have future planning as a skill set within your kind of everyday work, in your conversations, in your planning. Hopefully that you feel empowered to really kind of go forward and stop the sort of like plan as we always do, and how can we plan with this future proofing lens. So today we're going to try and do a very quick recap, and we're going to be demonstrating 2 more kind of critical processes in terms of developing a vision, and also the approach in a Foresight process of backcasting, which is a really interesting method for planning and designing transformational actions. We're then going to be able to have a breakout together and discuss opportunities for future support and where to next. So just to recap, we'll go along that path, and we'll have the exercise. We'll be then discussing about strategy and how do we bring together all the sort of insights we're getting from our Foresight process. And at the end, we would ask for your help in an evaluation and being able to guide us on where to next. So recap on 3, and we've heard from some people like Noni who went there, so don't worry if you weren't there. This is a nice also recap. So 3 timeframes Foresight focuses on. Anybody want to quickly offer up in the chat box what they are? We do what in a Foresight process? What are the 3 timeframes? And we need quick answers today because we've got a lot to get through. Anybody have an answer for me in the chat box? Foresight looks in 3 timeframes. What are they? Anybody? I don't see any. Yes, past, present, and future. Thanks, Karen. Fantastic. So one key take home, three core time frames. We look into the past, we look at trends, and we look at what's happened. We then bring those together and we assess what's happening in the present, and we do a range of processes and tools. We then need to look forward, and we do a whole range of methods to anticipate the future. So it's these three core time frames in a Foresight process. So thanks to those for helping on that. So now you have the chance to unmic and just shout out. But we had an approach last session that we looked to unpack, understanding the differences between symptoms and problems. Do you remember what this process was? Just shout out. No wrong answers. What was the method we went into to understand symptoms and the difference between symptoms and problems? Anybody have an answer? What was that tool we dived into? Anybody? Nkole, you were asking to see more about this. So maybe you know this technique, this method.
Cognitive bias.
Oh, thanks, Darian. That's a nice one. Anybody else? Not quite cognitive bias, but that's a very interesting one. So what we did is we did a root cause analysis where we tried to unpack, we used the example of water scarcity, and we unpacked how when you have an issue, there are multiple causes that underlie it. And for each of those causes, you would have an implication that you would have to unpack. So causal analysis or simple root cause analysis is a really powerful tool in the Foresight process to understand deeper symptoms, especially critical in your planning process. So that was a root cause analysis we went through. We also looked at something else, and we looked around systems mapping. And it'd be really interesting if you could just quickly in the chat box, fill in the blank. What system are you working within? Remember, we just defined and described what a system was. So are there any, if you think about a system, what system are you working within? And there's no wrong answers. So just any kind of reflections in the chat box would be super useful. Thinking about a system, and I'll come back to those while I describe. So we had used the example of a food system, which is quite complex, which is why we've chosen it to try and explain this. Because in the beginning of a food system, you might think of just a farming system in the middle, but we really unpacked how a system has multiple components to it. And there are also interlinking aspects. So it's not, you start to unpack it in terms of environmental, sociocultural, economic linkages, and all the aspects that are happening within your system. So thanks to those answering, Olga's working within a seed system, Caleb's working on food, Totsilia is working on crop production, livestock systems, great. So we started to unpack also within systems, there are multiple drivers. So even if you think of your agricultural system, you could start to think that there are multiple drivers impacting your system. So we started to look at how these drivers need to be really thought of, and they're very valuable when you're coming into a scenario building process. So we then took a deep dive into scenarios, and we wanted to identify drivers that are the two key critical things for drivers. Do we remember what we were trying to identify with those drivers? Internal and external drivers. That's great. There's two different types of drivers. And we wanted to identify drivers that are highly something and highly something. Uncertain and impactful. Yes, fantastic. So that is really the crux of the scenario building process at the beginning, is really understanding uncertainty and impact of the drivers that are impacting your system. So thanks. Yeah, we're looking at how impactful and how uncertain they were. And we started to build a whole kind of exercise around identifying and building drivers from a scenario process. And we went step by step through this process to really set up at the end, when we had these different storylines, what are the implications, which we're going to dive into a bit today. And we just wanted to, before going into today's session, following the training, how would you explain the value of foresight? if you had to leave now and speak to your colleague tomorrow or a friend, or how would you, what's valuable about Foresight to you? What is it? It'd be really interesting to capture some of your insight here in terms of how to best plan for the future. Thanks, Darian. Yeah, these are really valuable. So if you keep capturing yours in the chat box, those are going to be really insightful for us in terms of the value people are taking from Foresight as an approach. I am now going to hand over to Constance to dive into visioning. And I'll stop my share.
Mute myself and share my screen.
And I'll keep going through. I'll start transformative, future-proofing plans, securing the future. These are fantastic. Thanks, guys. Keep these coming. And over to you, Constance.
Thanks so much, Sabrina, and great responses. Let's stay ready to dance all through the process. Okay, so I am going to take you on a bit of a whirlwind tour through a few tools and processes that we find very, very important to our Foresight work and to long-term planning. So visioning, I am going, let me just find my, I'm with you now. Okay, so envisioning, what we're going to want to do now, we've been working on our scenario process, but we want to know, which helped us know what might happen. With visioning, we really want to know what should happen, right? What should happen? So just out of interest, does your institution, your department, or your program, your company have, or your personal life, do you have a future vision? And in what year does it take you to? So if anybody wants to shout out or write in the chat box, I'm keen to know if people are working from an organizational or departmental or government vision. How are we doing?
Yeah, so Nani's got a vision, 2030 and 2065. Olga's got a 5-year vision, Tendai up to 2030. Karen Allen, they have a 2030 strategy. Another Dele is working to 2030, another 2030. Yeah,
Brilliant.
So we seem to have some time.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Here.
So we're working in those timelines with the SDGs and with the aspirations of Africa. So just quickly, because I think a lot of people have a different view of what a vision is and how impactful it can be. But a vision is how we collaboratively outline a really compelling vision for a preferred future for ourselves. And it really is a powerful strategy for because it provides the basis for how we're going to do our interventions, what services we're going to employ, what policies, what partnerships, what is actually going to be required to meet that future that we prefer. But I just want to highlight something from actually some recent work that Sabrina and I did. And one of the things that came out is that we find that a lot of the political processes that are going on and a lot of the international organizations are setting future visions that are based on their assessments, on their values. And yet there is a full collection of individual aspirations and community aspirations that shape the response to other visions. So it's really important that we link and align multi-scale views and aspirations and those processes if we truly want to significantly improve our progress. So I'm going to take you through a version of how we build a vision, and it's a 3-part vision. So we're going to start here. We identify our theme. Again, we're working at a pretty massive scale in this training because we're talking about climate resilient food systems at a national level. For this vision, we're going to go with 2035. And one of the things we want to do, and you've seen this throughout the process, is we want to continue to keep our eyes on the different dimensions within our system. or as some people would say, different dimensions around sustainability and resilience. So here we're choosing economic, sociocultural, agricultural productivity, environment, institutional, and because of you, we've added technology as an actual dimension because we're seeing that is more and more important. So first step now is to lay out what are the outcomes, the desired outcomes, our aspirations that we want to see within these different dimensions. So for example, economically, for this climate resilience, we need investments in decent green employment. We need a focus on social protection systems that cover the needs of the poor. Over on institutional, we want climate change measures built into all of our national plans and policies. So what we're doing now is we're writing down our aspirations. We know very much there's going to be some overlap in these dimensions, but you want to get them all on the table. So these are just examples. You would have a longer list of aspirations within each of these dimensions. The next step is to understand what has to be in place for these dimensions, for these aspirations to actually be achieved. What has to be in place? This is not your how, this is just describing the what. So for example, when we said we wanted green employment, we know that we're gonna have to create green jobs and entrepreneurship for the youth. We know that we're gonna have to have mechanisms to incentivize cross-sectoral integration in our governments. So you just look at what would have to be in place to make that aspiration spark. And last but not least, and this is where you're really thinking long-term planning, you ask yourself, what do I have to have in place to sustain all of this? And so we're just throwing out some examples, but we would actually have to have thriving local livelihoods. We can't just have big box stores coming in and taking over everything. We would want to have respect across all citizens. We would want functioning ecosystem services and processes, and responsive and effective trusted government. So this allows us to look at the long-term priorities and understand what we're actually going to have in place, what we're working towards in the long term. So you take this three-part, and it's going to be much fuller than what I've just shown you, and you would craft your vision statement, which is a much more robust statement in terms of we in the SADC region aspire to, and then you bring those elements, those things you've aspired to, and that we're going to create opportunities for those things that have to support those aspirations. And lastly, we have to talk about what has to be in place to sustain it. So, for example, all of this is underpinned by leadership with integrity and long-term views and resilient natural resources. So you would craft your statement, and then you have a much more robust vision for which to plan your future activities. So just to bring in the stakeholder side one more time, this is important to bring out everybody's aspirations and reduce the competing objectives. More often than not, we share values. And then if you bring these different dimensions, it helps you understand, well, a deeper engagement with different stakeholders. So everybody feels a part of it. It fosters relationships. It helps you shift values, and it builds ownership so that you can get the necessary buy-in of those that are going to put this in place. So one of the things, and we have a checklist, we're going to share all of this for how you do this vision. But one of the things you might be asking is, hey, Constance, last week we put together all of these scenario storylines and we had these preferred futures. Well, how is that different from our vision? So I want to bring you through this very quickly. So we said after you've done your scenarios, you've got storylines, and you're able to see what preferred futures you want in those storylines. And you're also able to see what futures you're hoping to avoid in those storylines. And that's what we are planning with. So let's just take some examples. So I've looked across the storylines. We're grabbing preferred storylines. We're also seeing storylines that we'd like to avoid. And so if we pick up on some of these, we would want to go back to our vision and make it in sync with those future storylines. So for example, we're seeing, oh my goodness, one of our futures could be power grabs. We want to avoid that. And we would go back to that 3-part vision and we would add those elements in. So now we have a vision that's also going to be taking into account uncertainty. So we're adding in create guardrails in policies to support good governance, for example, or a means for preparing for climate-oriented disaster. So we're using the scenario storylines, the future we want, and we're merging that in to ensure that we have a vision that actually is helping capture those uncertainties that we're going to have to work with. So one example is South Africa has just put together its long-term strategy for the UNFCCC. And they already had a really nice vision inside of their development, their national development plan. But because they did their LTS and they ran their scenarios, they are going back and revising their national development plan. So if you have a vision, you can make it more robust. If you've run your scenarios, you can do the vision setting collaboratively with those futures. Now, how do we get to that vision? How do we get to those futures? So I'm going to introduce one tool that we use for this, and I'm looking forward to having some good interaction with you. Now we start to talk about what do we need to do. And I'm going to introduce backcasting. Backcasting allows us, once we have our defined vision or desirable future, we want to step into that place and work backwards to say what actions, those partnerships, those policy changes that are going to connect the past, the future to the present, so we know really what's it going to take. The big question is, how did I get here? So we are going to step into the future where we have achieved our vision or a part of our vision. And we are going to look backwards and say, how did I get here? And doing this actually shifts mindsets. When you do it in practice, you'll find that people get extremely creative. So the quick steps: step into the future, position yourself. We have been successful, high fives, we did it. So now we're living in the future. That is our new present. We look back, we say, what do we remember about how we got here? And you start to brainstorm. What actions did we do? What partnerships did we make? What barriers did we overcome? And we like to look at this and say, when did we do that got us here? So we're going to do a quick exercise together. We're going to consider one aspect of our 2035 vision, and we are going to say we have successfully achieved it, and we're going to look back and say, how did we get to today when we're so proud of the work we've done? So we're going to do this as a quick chatterfall. We're going to do a series of 3, which means I'm going to ask you something. You're going to type it in, think about it, type it in, but don't send, and then we'll all send together. And Sabrina, I'm going to need your help on this one, please.
Sure, I'm here.
Okay, so we are in 2035, and here's what we have achieved. The farmers and the pastoralists across all of the SADC region are using climate resilient agroecological approaches, and they're ably providing diverse sources of food to meet the nutritional security requirements of both rural and urban populations. So think about this. and tell me what you remember about how we managed to achieve this. And I've put a quick hint in the example, which is, for example, I remember when SADC launched this massive wide radio campaign in local languages to raise awareness on climate smart and nutritional smart agricultural farming. So that's my example. Tell me what you remember about how we managed to get here and when. All right, thinking, typing. Let's go. Let's share those ideas. How did we do it?
Capacity building of local farmers in 2023, education, sensitization and training. Don't forget to put your dates, guys, as well, if you had an idea when these things happened. Training farmers, more awareness on climate smart agriculture, funding of cooperatives. Fantastic.
All right.
TV program in 2016, enhanced productivity training from 2020 to 2025. In 2023, we did farmer training and capacitation, awareness campaigns of climate smart agriculture.
Okay, fantastic. So we're starting to brainstorm on how we got here. And we're starting to see where we would have had to do that effort in order to make it to this day of success. All right, now let's do another one. So we always have barriers that keep us from getting our work done. We have barriers to achieving our vision. So to achieve our success, how did we overcome the barriers? So here's an example that I'm going to invite you to answer. Tell me what you remember about how we were able to minimize the effects of drought in Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia in 2026. What did we do? How did we overcome that drought? Were we able to minimize the effects by something we did earlier? All right, we've built capacity. All right, irrigation became a priority. We planted trees. We did water harvesting. Brilliant. All right. Excellent. Did we manage the land? I'm just checking. All right.
Water harvesting technologies, yeah, promoting conservation farming.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, so this is looking good, guys. You're checking to see, you know there are going to be issues that you're aware of, and you're checking to say, okay, we've got to be able to overcome these. We've got to be able to minimize the risks that we're getting under climate change. So last but not least, I want to ask you that now that we've achieved this vision, what were some of the surprising partnerships we built to achieve it? What are some of the surprising partnerships? Which new groups were working with which groups?
And remember, Constance took us out to 2035. So we're sitting in 2035 right now, and we're reflecting back. What were the partnerships and when?
Okay, I'm seeing a little bit of non-dancing. Oh, here we go. NGOs were working with youth groups, aggregators. All right, who was working with whom? Government and NGOs were working. Farmers, organizations, government, public-private partnerships. Private sector was working with community. Very good. A lot of multi-stakeholder partnerships. Fantastic. So this has been an exercise. Oh, look at this, farmers and computer app developers. That's very new. Aggregators working on promoting those value chains. We're going to go with those very climate-friendly value chains. So you can imagine, these are excellent. Sorry, Sabrina, did you want to read something?
No, I was just going to say, just remember, back to session 1, when you're putting your answers here and we're doing this future thinking exercise, we're in 2035, and we're really pushing with the Foresight approach. Remember that word transformation and transformational planning, and think, am I doing incremental? Is what I'm suggesting, am I still in 2021? So it's really making sure that in a foresight process, you're really kind of pushing your mindset also from an incremental to a transformational point of view. So what do we have to do dramatically differently, knowing that the future we're going to be in is going to be dramatically differently. So that's your real kind of like skill set hint in terms of the foresight process.
Thank you for that, Sabrina. And so when you're really doing this exercise, you've got your futures, you've got your vision, you've brought this together, you're ready to deal with uncertainty. You really want to drill down into those transformational changes that are going to get you there, because we have to think transformationally now if we're going to meet those futures that we desire. So thank you. And just check in to see if there are any questions. I went quite rapidly. Darian.
According to the vision that you have, put before us, it seems that one sentence vision wouldn't suffice. So we need to actually describe it from different sectors and points of view to be inclusive. So in a way that's radical, but in a good way.
You're absolutely spot on, Darian. We have to be inclusive. I have seen a 3-part vision pulled together by 4,000 people for one community. You have to be inclusive, and your vision that you don't necessarily share with the public is going to be much more detailed. And I was just giving some spot examples, but you're absolutely right. It would have much more detail. Thanks for that, Darian. And I hope it is transformative or radical. All right, thank you. Sabrina?
Sure, are there any more?
Oh wait, Dele, I'm sorry. Yep.
Hello?
Dele, yes, please.
Hello? Yes,
I hear you.
The issue of vision now, how about the mission statement? We're talking about vision. Yes. How about the mission? How does it come in here? Because the vision and the mission statement need to align.
Yes, no, absolutely.
I didn't hear anywhere you didn't say anything about mission statement, because that is very necessary. Anytime you have a vision, there should be mission statement.
You're exactly right. And that is an opportunity. You want a mission statement derived from your vision. Your vision is bigger than you quite often. Your mission statement is, what do we actually do? And your mission statement is the most public of the outcome here.
Yes.
So you say, what do we actually do? Thanks for raising that. I appreciate that.
So what I mean is that now, I didn't see where you fit in that, because when you're talking about vision, there must also be mission statement. So where does it fit in this the context of this foresight?
Right. Okay.
That's what I want to ask.
Well,
yes.
It would fit in with your vision statement, but now think about it. We won't all have the same vision. This is for all climate resilient food systems we've just described. So our organization, my organization, may have one role towards implementing some of those transformative actions. So I would ultimately, in my organization, define my mission statement relative to what we contribute towards that vision. Yeah. So you're not going to have one mission statement for all of Southern Africa, perhaps, but you'd have mission statements for those that are implementing the vision.
Because from what I'm saying is that the vision should be all inclusive.
Yes.
If it's all inclusive, the mission statement obviously must be all inclusive, because you're going to draw in your mission statement from the vision. So how do we now, because the mission is not only for you, because this has to be stated clearly so that it fits into the mission and the vision. The vision is there, but the mission statement is what you use to achieve those.
Yeah, it's what we actually do. It's our value addition. I'll put some more words into the chat box for you, Dele, because I may not have explained it as well as I could have.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Constance. Thanks so much, Dele, for that great question. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to move us on to the next session, but please
I didn't get
anything.
The room is blocking. I didn't get what you're saying.
Please register any questions in the chat box, and okay. we'll continue. Constance is going to get back to you, Dele, in the chat box. So for the next part, we realized on Monday, we finished and we had gathered our scenario storylines, and you've just been exposed quite quickly to some other foresight processes. For example, backcasting is a very useful process you start to do right at the end, when we start to say, what will we do differently? And we start to then bring in, we've realized with the foresight process, you are getting multiple insights about the future. So just going to take us back to the foresight framework, which we've been using in terms of a guiding structure along the way. And this is really where we're right at the end in terms of thinking in terms of long-term planning. We're starting to get to the reflection and the strategy phase of what will we do differently. And I'd just like to remind us that there is no one-size-fits-all foresight process. And you might see it here like a linear framework where we go from the input to the strategy. But really, it's a very iterative process. So like we learned when we were doing our scenarios, you might need to bring in more evidence. You might need to do more stakeholder consultations. So it's not like you would ever finish a foresight process. And I think going back to Dele's question about the mission statements are also very important, depending on what strategy or planning process you're within. That's something you're going to have to address frequently, especially when we're thinking about the frequency of change. So your missions are going to kind of change also based on what we're seeing about 5 or 10-year time planning horizons. So really, the scenario process and the different futures that we're starting to see coming out of the different foresight methods that we've gone over really are helping us to ideally plan to move away from the unfortunate kind of storylines we were seeing and move towards these kind of preferred scenarios of the future. That's really where it's helping us kind of navigate in terms of a planning process. So in terms of some of the scenarios we built, on Monday, we had drivers. We picked various drivers and we built storylines for those. So for example, we had youth unemployment and national borders closing. So we looked at integration and employment as one set of drivers. We looked at disease prevalence and climate risk. We could have another set of drivers in terms of political support and technology investment. So ideally in your scenario process, you would have built multiple storylines like this. And then you need to really start to filter in at the end of your foresight process in terms of your strategy is what are the implications of this? And then what are the actions we're starting to see that need to be done? So with each of your scenario storylines, I'll go to the first scenario we built in terms of unemployment and trade. We start to see that our storylines are telling us, and this could be on different timelines, that we need to create, for example, policies to support subsidization. Do we need to enhance production or nutrient flows across countries, vocational education, green growth, increased diversity or productivity, and also looking at integrated productive systems. So you start to use these storylines to build implications and actions, starting to think, actually, what do we need to do? What are the future that we're mapping out? We're starting to realize these are the actions we need in place. So I wanted to kind of put this example because there's been many scenario processes, both at a national level and within SADC. A process that was done 2 years ago now, brought together different stakeholders at the SADC level. And this is just to illustrate that in a scenario process, you're going to have, in terms of bringing multiple stakeholders together, and you're going to have divergent visions and common ones. So people are going to see the future in one way and others are going to see it in a different way. So you're basically going to be emerging from a lot of these foresight methods with lots of different future options. So at the end of the strategy phase, the real critical skill is starting to prioritize. And I think we had this question on Monday, which was a really valuable one in terms of how do you start to filter all these options into a planning process that you might have. So I'll just skip over that. And just to reiterate, and I think I just said this about transformation, I think in the first session, we really talked about interventions, institutions, policies, and partnerships, and starting to think about transformational planning versus incremental planning. So this is also really important when you start to think about what are all these implications coming out of your Foresight methods. So really the premise is that we're hoping that Foresight really allows us to build these action plans that we can analyze these future policies or current policies and sort of make sure that they have a future-proof lens to them. So this is why we've carried out within whatever your sort of Foresight objective would be, is really to unpack what are the changes that are needed. So I just wanted to ask, in terms of your planning process right now, how do you currently prioritize? So you might have a million things you could do. How do you prioritize? Do you have a process? Do you have a specific method? How do you prioritize in your planning? It'd be really interesting just to get across this idea of prioritization. Do we have any answers? Cost benefit considerations. Okay, I've got a question there. So Dumisani just put cost benefit. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a really looking at impact. Anyone else got any sort of how they do prioritization right now? I'll keep referring back to that. But really, I'm sorry, there's one there about ranking and analyzing impact. Yes, fantastic. The critical thing is prioritization, again, is a very critical Foresight skill in terms of combining everything we know. So we've maybe done a backcasting exercise, a scenario exercise, we've looked at systems, we've mapped our stakeholders, and we now need to say within our process, so a planning or a strategic process or a department we're working within, and the knowledge of fixed resources, how do we then take what we have and do things in terms of ordering things to improve future planning. So it's really this kind of skill set and this art around how do we take everything with the resources and the planning process we're within. And we're getting some really nice examples there. Thank you, about ranking impacts, etc. We won't have time. We won't have time today to dive into prioritization frameworks and how we do it, but starting to really, the ambition here in the strategy phase is starting to really build a filter. So you're really looking at the impact of what you're seeing coming out of various methods and the urgency you need to address them. That's the critical thing to have. And you start to filter what we really must do, what would potentially be some nice to haves, and what are things that maybe we can cater with later. And remembering a prioritization, there's like objective tools, such as I'm showing here, and then there's very quantitative tools. And I think Dumisani put one around cost benefit analysis. And that's why also a very participatory process in the prioritization is really valuable. So not leaving decisions up to one key senior person, for example, being able to say, how can we bring together and really start to filter what we're seeing from these future impacts? So yeah, I think just from some of the tools we've shown you and some of the process, another way of prioritizing from the scenario narratives, you can also start to build some specific outcomes and looking at different times. And that's where the backcasting exercise we showed you is really valuable, because you put yourself right at the end of where you want to get to. So if your planning process is to 2050, you can start your backcasting exercise in 2050 and really work backwards incrementally how you achieved your desired vision. So you have your inputs from the scenario process as well as the vision, and you can then run a backcasting process to really say, where did I get to in terms of my outcomes? So these are some of the sort of processes towards the end of a Foresight process. And it's we're not going to be able to dive into these in detail, but this is sort of some of the process within your application that you would bring together. I just wanted to also bring across that in the strategy phase, a really critical element is going to be trade-offs. Because whatever future options you come with, even if you say we're going to go for these three actions that need to be put into my strategy, or these are three things that we're going to invest in immediately, there's going to be trade-offs. So if you invest or you go in one area, this might impact something else. So for example, you might be investing in digital extension, but is this potentially going to be promoting subsidies and fertilization versus agroecological approaches? Are you enabling one aspect versus something else because of your intervention? So it's really just at the back of your mind, also remembering that in your planning that there's going to be trade-offs, and having a point to assess those in your prioritization. Yeah, and this was also just to get across that having a group of motivated people that you've brought through a Foresight process is super valuable, because basically when you get to this prioritization, there's a real sense in terms of participation, and you've also really mapped your system together. You've brought in diverse stakeholders, and you're not relying then on the future planning in terms of maybe the intuition of a single leader, and you're kind of going in a more kind of committed front. So this is really critical in terms of prioritization. So that was a very quick kind of sense of where we get to when we starting to what we will do differently. And I just wanted to bring us back to some of the key steps and stages. This has really been the last 4 sessions with you have been really a sensitization. It's been a very quick dip, as we could do within these sessions, in terms of introducing you to Foresight, these key questions, steps, and stages. And so hopefully everyone gets a sense of the journey that a full kind of strategic Foresight process could go with, in terms of moving from your scope. Remember, we did the problem definition, and you can do an initial system mapping. You then are able to do things such as trends analysis and horizon scanning. Here we would be looking for signals and different weak trends, and you would be doing a very kind of deep historical review or a situational analysis. We then can look at causal analysis. We can look at drivers, and with those drivers, remember, we're unpacking impact and uncertainty. And then also in terms of developing scenarios and visioning, we've just had Constance has just kind of taken us through the value and the importance of setting this like strong vision. And within that, you can then prioritize your outcomes. Backcasting is a very, very valuable method. And also from there, taking these transformative actions we need to take forward. And then depending what process you're in and how you're applying Foresight, you would be either reevaluating a strategy or plan or process already in play, or developing a new kind of future-proofed process. So that hopefully takes you through a sort of fly through on some of the Foresight process and the ways we could go about it. I don't want to go into this too deeply right now, because we're going to share these resources. I wanted to open it for questions, and we are also hoping to now take you into a breakout. So before the breakout, though, I would just like to make sure we had a quick chance for any questions. Let me see.
You do have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, Jafari, does output and outcome differ in practice? That's a great question. And yes, so the outcome is really what are you aiming to achieve? So you would have your outcome. So by 2030, this is what we would like to achieve. The output can be, you can have a set of outputs that get you towards that outcome. So an output could be in 2030, you wanted to shift a whole region into climate smart agriculture. An output would therefore be in 2022, you did, so you sensitized on a process. In 2024, a different output. So outputs are, you think of them as stepping stones towards an outcome. Do I see any other points?
Yeah. Dennis asked, I wanted to know what conduit is best suited when you are looking back at the end of achieving our vision in terms of the strategy used. Dennis, I may need a little bit of clarification there when you talk about the conduit. Can you open your mic and tell us what you're asking?
Frederick, while we wait for, Dennis was having sound issues earlier, so I'm not sure if he has sorted those out.
All right, when he does, we'll take it.
Yeah, and Frederick was just asked in terms of can we get outcome and impact at the same moment? This is a really interesting question, and this is often in terms of planning projects. If people do impact pathways, this is what you're really trying to sort of build up to say, what is the outcome, and then what is the overall impact of that. And there's often a lot of debate in building an impact pathway, whether the impact is part of the outcome or the impact comes afterwards. But we often see the impact as the final sort of what you're aiming for. What is your kind of transformational impact? And you can have multiple outcomes feeding into that impact. But it's a great question, Frederick. I think there's often still debate in terms of how you plan a project, and does it make sense if we're calling multiple outcomes into an impact. We are now going to have a quick breakout. It'll be led by myself, Constance, and we have another colleague, Romy. I just would ask, we'll introduce Romy just now, but we've got 3 of us who will be helping to lead a breakout. And in this breakout, we're going to have 15 minutes to have a quick discussion amongst a smaller group. And what we've really wanted to use today's session is to understand where we could potentially be applying Foresight in the work that you're doing, in terms of anything you have planned this year or coming up, in terms of now you've been potentially exposed to what Foresight is, and you've seen very briefly some of the methods. Do you see a gap or opportunity where you could have Foresight support? And is there anything specifically maybe in a process? So we'll go through that in the breakout together to really try and map out, you know, where more in detail for your own kind of personal application, where we can go in terms of the Foresight process. So we'll be filling out a table together where we'll basically be understanding what policy or process or activity you might be doing with for the rest of this year or into next year. And then any gaps in terms of specific support, where you're really thinking, is it an engagement method, prioritization, a sort of a systems mapping, etc. Are you starting to see where the area is? And was there a specific tool that you saw that, like, actually, I would like to unpack that a little bit more? And importantly, we'd love to also start to get some contacts for follow-up to see where we could go. And when we come from the breakout, we'll be having a discussion together around next steps and the potential for a kind of working community of practice together. So Pierre, with that, if we could break us off into 3 groups.
Yes, we certainly can, Sabrina. I just wanted to check, since we're a bit, we're good with time.
Sure.
Should we keep it to 15 minutes, or shall we add a couple of minutes more to the breakout?
No, I think 15 would be good, so that we have a bit of a chance when we get back to kind of collectively share. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm opening the room now. You'll get broadcast messages as halfway and 2 minutes to time.
Great. Thank you so much. See you in the breakout.
Off you go. Enjoy.
Off we go.
Welcome back, everybody. People are coming back in from the breakout in the next few seconds. And we should have soon everybody back. Time goes fast in breakout, doesn't it? It has a different dimension, I always find.
Hi.
I think we're pretty much back. Yeah, I think everybody should be back by now.
Okay. Shoo, the vortex of breakout time, hey?
Yeah.
Yes.
No fair.
Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. That was a quick, that was a little bit of a chance to start to unpack what everybody's doing. We have the main chat box, and we would have kept the other answers. I just would like, Constance, could you do a quick run around? I know we maybe didn't get to everyone. I didn't get to everyone in our group, but just a quick sense of what people are working on and what they're starting to think of.
Sure. Well, it was really fun, and I do wish everybody had had a chance to really speak. But what happened was one of our colleagues quickly came out and said, we're really trying to scale up, promote indigenous livestock, to which a response was, wait a minute, we're trying to do a similar thing. This is Walter who's saying we are trying to do a similar thing of getting livestock more front and center in the UNFCCC work and the NDCs. And then Karen stepped forward and said, we actually have a model that could provide some evidence that would help with this. So in terms of marketing, so we saw that we needed pretty much full process, but we did name some of the tools. And Karen told us that their program had just gone through a scenario process using similar principles called the SLS, and it had been very valuable.
Okay, fantastic.
Thanks,
so
everybody.
For anyone in the group who didn't manage, and we've got the chat box, and so if you do have an example, please capture it, and we'll be sure to, like, if you, in terms of what you're working on and sort of opportunities for future, and make sure that we have your name there. So Romy, I'm sorry I didn't get to introduce you before the breakouts.
And my breakout group has got the quick rundown on who I was and why I was here. I couldn't share my screen, so it was disabled, so I had to do furious writing. So let's hope I can read my writing. But essentially, we had quite a good conversation around new, the use of tools for new strategies, and there was a lot of examples around kind of new agricultural policies where some tools, like for example, in Botswana, there's issues around missing baseline data. So a lot around trends analysis that might be useful. There was a really interesting example by Conservation South Africa, Karen, who spoke about an aquaponics pilot that they're busy with, and a lot about transformational mindsets and shifting the way that we're thinking about that as a new kind of concept in the South African landscape. From Nigeria, we spoke about the National Extension Service policies and how they wanted to try and mainstream or use tools to mainstream climate smart agriculture in that. Zimbabwe, we heard about their national development strategies for agriculture, and again, other tools like stakeholder mapping that needed to be included, and that, you know, it's this whole idea of keeping everything static and keeping up with this whole of future mindsets thinking and how we can plan for what might change. And then from Botswana, we spoke about basically prioritization and how important that would be as a tool for them in terms of some of the work that they're doing on commodities. So yeah, got some great examples.
Wow.
Great,
yeah.
Thank you so much for me, and sorry about the screen, but it sounds like you guys had a very rich discussion. So just quickly from my group, we again didn't manage to get through everyone, but I've hopefully encouraged everyone to capture. We had some really nice examples of some work. Dumisani was talking in Zimbabwe about setting up innovation centers for climate resilience, and an idea there thinking, how do we look at innovation into the future, and what are those centers going to need to provide now and into the future. And we had a really nice example from Lesotho about looking at the opportunity for cattle production in the country and what would be the sort of trends and evidence and partnerships they would have to bring in terms of different NGO perspectives, etc. And then we had some other really nice examples. I'll just go back to my screen in terms of setting up rangeland restoration programs, and that was from Edmore. And then we've also heard about in Eswatini about setting up a hydroponic system and thinking about youth engagement and teaching. So really trying to see where the potential would be for bringing in evidence at that level. So just starting to scope some initial ideas, and sorry that it was not enough time for kind of everybody to capture. But we also wanted to now open it up as a kind of roundup session now. Although I won't share my screen because we can have a little bit more time in terms of discussion. But we, as we mentioned, this was a sensitization series, and we've done this in partnership with CADESA and the work that we're doing within the ACRA project. And we've seen that there's a really big potential for more applying foresight and building and moving foresight into these kind of processes that people are working within. So we just wanted to open it up if anyone had any ideas, if they either wanted to kind of chat or put in the chat box. But what would be a sense of, and I will actually just share my screen because we had some ideas we were going to suggest, in terms of where we could think about building more kind of foresight momentum within the region across the continent. And we know we've got colleagues also that are linking in from other areas. We've got some participants from India and from Sri Lanka, for example. So we just wanted to kind of understand in terms of ideas for building tailored support. Also importantly, we need more trainers. We need more people who can be Foresight trainers and practitioners. And there was also the idea around a kind of community of practice. And then also thinking ideas of scale. Would there be interest in institutional training or more kind of like individual level sort of like courses? So I just wanted to quickly share that in terms of ideas. Did we have anyone who wanted to kind of respond or what they would like, any kind of quickly ideas? We'll scope around and have a quick sort of discussion on that. Anyone wants to, we'd love to hear from you as well. Gladys, I don't think we can hear you that
Good afternoon.
clearly. Hi, now we can hear you.
Yes, so now information change. Information is and people getting and empower you giving views and knowledge. So we want to introduce the innovation of climate change using research, technology, and building capacity in Zambia.
Hi, sorry, Bletas, I think we're all having a challenge hearing you, and I'm not quite sure why, and I apologize for that. Could we ask you to write it in the chat box? Are you able to do that? Because we heard empowerment, we heard technology, but we didn't hear the whole statement or question. And in the meantime, Olga has set us up and said that she's working on a research project. We want to make sure we emphasize that this is very applicable for designing research. They're trying to catalyze climate finance in SADC, and that they're part of a South-South-North titled South African Climate Finance Partnership. So Olga, I'm seeing that you might have, you see an opportunity for Foresight.
Yeah, fantastic. So we'll see if we can get any more, we've also actually got a short survey with some evaluation that we wanted to get, and this actually gives everybody a chance to put down in more detail. So I think, Pierre, it would be really valuable if we can share that now as well. In the chat box, you'll see a link to a form. If you're able to click on that, and hopefully it takes you to the form. And Dennis, we've registered your question. I'll just get to you now. I don't know if hopefully you can get to the form, but this is basically also trying to capture some of your feedback on the session. And importantly, it gives you a chance to put some of those details on next applications and ideas for future training. So I would encourage everyone now to just take a couple of minutes to go through the form. It should be very quick. It shouldn't hopefully take you more than 2 minutes, 2-3 minutes while we're together. Darian, I can see your face. Can you open it? Is it okay? I can't see anyone else. Okay, you can see it. Great, thumbs up. Everyone can open that, no problem. If you have any issues, let me know. Or let Pierre know, we'll get you to it. So if you, and Pierre might have some nice music to encourage us while we make an evaluation, and then we'll come back to your question, Dennis. Our DJ Pierre.
I do not have the form.
You don't have the form?
Yeah.
Let me send you the link.
All right. Yeah.
Can you
got it now? Thank you.
Great.
Yes.
If anyone else has any issues, let me know. And we've got a couple of questions, so please register. Dennis will get back to you now. Citycat, send me your email, and then I'll try and email you the form. Thank you. I'll email it to you now. Hey, Citycat, I've just emailed. And Nani also, I will do that now.
Thank you.
Citycat, let me know if you get it. So we're having a few people putting this. Are some people still struggling? Ronnie, did you get that?
I'm just going to look for it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me know.
I might do it
Perfect. Okay, I think I got everyone. Okay.
later because I'm just having serious issues now.
No problem.
Okay, thanks.
We're also
we have no
in a
electricity
storm
for
here.
a week. Thanks.
Okay. So we just thank you so much for filling those in. Those are going to be very valuable in terms of getting the kind of critical feedback and scoping in terms of next steps. We also kind of wanted to take this opportunity to see if there were any last questions. I know Dennis had his hand up. So Dennis, is there a question we can make sure we answer while others are filling in their forms?
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, if we can just stop the, thank you. Dennis, great.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Now, mine is just like a recommendation. And
yes.
There are two things that I've seen is that that is youth engagement in climate smart agriculture.
Okay.
How best can we bring youth in?
Sure.
By maybe putting a seed grant for the project, which will help them really to bring them in piloting the climate smart agriculture. And then two is that how best can youth participate in restoring the reforestation that we have, that is the cutting down of trees. How best can they do that? So those are the two comments I wanted to put across.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, and Dennis, whereabouts are you based? I don't see it from your name.
Oh, I'm based in Uganda.
Okay, great. How to
Yes.
bring in youth. Okay, that's really valuable. So these kind of questions Dennis are asking, and he's giving a really nice example about, especially, I mean, one of the trends we showed in the first session was really in terms of youth. Africa is going to have one of the biggest youth populations in the world by 2050. And so these kind of trends that you can do as part of a Foresight process are super valuable to understand within your current program. How do you engage this critical kind of audience and population into where you're working? So that's really valuable. Thank you, Dennis. We registered that, and that's really important. Does anyone else have any other last kind of burning questions for us here? If not, I'll just go on to explaining where we'll have some of the resources and next steps and how you're going to hear from us. So In the chat box, I'm also going to put the event page. That's where you'll already find the recordings to the first couple of sessions. We're editing those and we'll put the sessions up from session 3 and session 4. And we're also going to then be loading an information pack that has the content you would have seen over the last 4 sessions. And there'll also be a place that we will continually put to questions and answers around Foresight. And we'll have a contact address there as well, in terms of being able to follow up with us on ideas and applications for next steps around the Foresight process, because we very much want to kind of use this to be able to just kind of continue the conversation and see where our next steps in terms of demand and where we can really feel the need to kind of bring across the kind of Foresight skill set even more. So Nani, this, yes, and thank you very much. You've asked a great question and I was just about to get to that, but we'll also be sending an email to everyone who registered and everyone who attended, and this will have all the links to the resources and it will have everything. So we will have a kind of full comprehensive email, which will have access to everything. And we're going to be doing a short blog on this as well. So you're going to get, you're going to have quite a few correspondences in the next few weeks from us. And we're going to be sort of compiling what we've heard from the evaluation and starting to suggest next steps and also how we can work on some of the examples. And so I just wanted to hand it over to Constance and invite everybody to put on their videos. I'm really sad that the series is over for now, but we just wanted to invite everyone to put on their videos and have a chance to any last kind of exchanges. And really, I wish we were all together in the same place.
Thank you so much for being with us. It was a whirlwind tour of Foresight, but we look forward to future engagements. Hopefully you've given us some new ideas in terms of trainings and other things that we can make happen. Look at all these fantastic humans, and thank you for sticking with us for the 4 times. We are delighted. Oh, great to see everyone. All right, so I wonder if we want to do a shout out and just to say whatever is on your mind right now as we're going. Hi, Dennis and friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have the little one around here.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Bring the children. We love this part. Thank you so much. It's just an absolute delight. Hi, Walter, Grace. Oh my goodness. It's so good to see everyone. And we just want to say thank you so much. Please stay healthy. Please continue to interact with us on this web page that Sabrina's talking about, the events page. Ask questions. We'll be ready to respond. We really look forward to it. And now let's all say, I am a Foresight practitioner. Ready? I am a Foresight practitioner. All right, let's cue the music and dance out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
so much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hey, we get a chance to dance.
Thank you.
Good for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
My team dancers.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dele.
I'm very happy to meet the audience.
Thanks,
you, Mohammed.
Thanks for your great questions.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sidikat. Thanks, Cecile. Matige, thank you.
Thank you.
Macabello, thank you. Elsa,
thanks, Marion. Thanks
so
for
good
all
to
your
have
amazing
you.
questions and insights. And I'm glad you kept safe last week.
George, thank you.
Romy.
Hi, George.
Romy.
Romy, you know George. All right, Celestina, you've got your friend there.
And Cole's got a great dance going on.
Yes, he does. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Celestina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Bye. Great. Thank you, Captain Sigele. Indigenous livestock. Stay safe. Enjoy. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
We're gonna close.
Thanks
here,
so much,
and
Mozi.
Looking forward to see you at the next Foresight party. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks, Constance. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sabrina.